Hey, what's up, everyone? What's up? What's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? Hope everybody is doing fantastic. We got Elham in the house. Elham, good to see you here as always. Nice to have you join in. So feel free to put in the comments, folks. Introduce yourselves. Let me know. Let us know. Let everyone else know who you are, where you're tuning in from. Represent your city. And more importantly, right, is represent your field, your industry, your space, right? This is LinkedIn, and most of you tuning in are job seekers. So make sure you're letting others know what your skills are, what your expertise is when you're introducing yourself, folks. All right. So great to have you here. If this is your first time tuning in, you're one of my new connections. You recently started following me and seeing what I'm about on LinkedIn. Hey, feel free to let me. Well, first of all, welcome, right? Welcome, and shout out to everyone tuning in for the first time. Happy to have you here. Also shout out to everyone, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, Facebook, tuning in, and also on Twitter. I'm gonna see if I can work my Instagram here in a few seconds, but let me know in the comments, folks. Again, get those introductions coming, because if you're not visible, if you've been following me on LinkedIn and my other social channels, I've been talking about this recently, right? If you're not visible, if organizations, if people in your network, if they don't know you exist, then you don't exist. All right. So be visible, put yourself out there and introduce yourself in the comments. Don't be shy. And what I'm speaking about today, folks, is a very important topic. Follow-up, right? Follow-up is extremely important. Because follow-up is a very effective strategy that I've always recommended people use in their job search, and it's something that I've been speaking about for at least for the past couple of years. And it's a very, very effective strategy that you as a job seeker need to make sure that you're utilizing and making use of in your job search, right? So before we get started, hit me up with a like. Make sure you like and make sure you reshare this stream with your network, so others can benefit from the information I'm going to go over today. And if you're watching the replay, shout out to everyone watching the replay. But if you want to tune in live, I'm live right here Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern time zone, right here on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, to help all of you folks out there who are job seekers and sharing effective, pragmatic strategies you can apply to your job search. So again, for those of you tuning in for the first time, quick introduction. My name is Dean Kulaweera. So I've been working, my experience is based on my 8+ years working in the staffing industry as a recruiter, specializing in IT recruitment. The tips, advice, and strategies I cover is pertinent regardless of industry and field. I try to share advice that is not particular only to the IT industry, and I've recruited for a variety of different organizations, ranging from startups all the way to large size multinational organizations. Been involved in recruitment cycles with various stakeholders and decision makers, ranging from HR people and corporate recruiters all the way through to C-level executives, as well as business owners and entrepreneurs as well. So my advice is, and the reason why I mentioned this is, this is where my advice is based on, right? So many conversations, so many recruitment cycles, so many interview cycles that I've been involved in, and that's what I wanted to bring to all of you folks each and every time I do one of my live streams. All right, we got my friend David in the house. David says morning energy. Houston, Texas. We got Houston in the house. H-Town is in the house. Good to have you here, David. Thanks so much for tuning in. So today's topic, folks, all right, and get ready to take notes. And usually all of my sessions, I'm going to be saying that. I always say that, but I always share information that all of you folks can take note of. But more importantly, folks, implement and execute on the information. All right, I'm not here to pump you up and get you excited and all that stuff. I'm sure there's plenty of people, sources where you can get that stuff, but I want you to leave here with practical stuff, pragmatic stuff that you can actually utilize in your job search. All right, so get ready to take notes. And again, so what I'm gonna, my task today is I want to convince all of you folks as to why follow up is so important for your job search. And follow up is not just about you asking, hey, do you have an update, or reaching out to the recruiter, the hiring manager, whoever your point of contact is, and simply saying, hey, do you have an update, or hey, have you made a decision? That's a very small part of follow up, folks. It's a very small part of follow up. Follow up is much more than just that, and that's what I'm going to talk about a bit today. We got Kaushiki in the house. Kaushiki, good to have you here. Good morning to you as well. Hope you're doing fantastic. Feel free to keep the comments coming, and as we go along, any questions you have, folks, feel free to put in the comments. I'm going to get to the questions as we go through today's topic. Right now, to kind of set things up for the topic, right? And I wanted to briefly touch on this great takeaway I got from this conference I attended over the weekend. It's called the 10x Growth Conference. It's basically a conference involving for business related marketing, sales, and all that kind of stuff. And there were some great guests, and I wanted to mention one of the guests in particular, which will relate to today's topic, which is follow up, right? Because one of the main concerns I get from job seekers and people that I speak to over the past few years is, Dean, I'm following up, I'm not getting any responses, people are ignoring my follow up, recruiters are not getting back to me when I follow up, hiring managers are not getting back to me when I follow up, I'm facing rejections, I'm not getting any responses. Is there any point to following up? And I wanted to share with you folks, all right, something very important from one of the guest speakers at this virtual conference I attended over the weekend. And one of them was baseball legend Alexander Rodriguez, right? Also known as A-Rod. Some of you might know him as A-Rod. Now, I'm not a sports guy, so don't worry. For those of you who are not into sports, not into baseball, don't worry. I'm not going to get into a whole baseball analogy here. But something very interesting that Mr. A-Rod said was that, and by the way, this is like a baseball legend, right? Like, and for those of you who are baseball fans, hey, feel free to share in the comments a bit more information about A-Rod for those of the people tuning in who might not know who he is. But he's basically a baseball legend, right? Well respected, and at this stage of his life, he's more into business, right? And he has like this huge real estate empire he's built up. And something very interesting that Alexander Rodriguez said at this conference is, in all of baseball history, right now, this is despite his success and how successful he's been as a baseball player, and all of his current success in business and real estate and all that stuff. Despite all of this, folks, something very interesting he mentioned is, in all of baseball history, he has the 5th highest number of strikeouts in all of baseball history. Now, I don't know how long the game of baseball has existed. I would assume maybe since, I don't know, like this the 17 or 1800s or something like that. But in all of baseball history, he has the 5th highest number of strikeouts in all of baseball history. And this is coming from, and this guy, he's like a baseball legend, right? And he's obviously done well for himself, and he's doing really well in life. And the reason why he mentioned that was basically trying to tell us, the viewers, right, not to shy away from rejections and disappointments and lack of responses. And when he mentioned this, it really made me think about the job search, right? Like, so many of you folks, you're putting out your applications, you're putting out your LinkedIn messages, you're putting out maybe some phone calls, maybe you're following up, you're going for interviews, you're getting rejected, you're facing all these disappointments. And for sure, totally get where you folks are coming from, right? But here's a baseball legend, right? A master in his space, someone who's extremely successful, financially successful as well, right? He built a huge real estate empire. And he's telling you, hey, guess what? I have the 5th highest amount of strikeouts in baseball history, and I'm considered a legend, right? So before we get into talking about follow-up, folks, the first thing I wanted to signify to all of you folks tuning in and watching this is, you got to be willing to go for rejection. You got to be willing to face those rejections. You got to be willing to get striked out, right? Just like how Mr. A-Rod said when he in his presentation at the conference this weekend that I attended, the virtual conference. You got to be willing to go for failure, folks, because the more failures you get, the more lack of responses you get. Yes, it's disappointing. Yeah, sometimes it's going to feel like you're getting punched in the face. But guess what? The end results, the outcomes, you could very well be just, success, and those positive responses could just be around the corner, right? So I just wanted to quickly relate that from that virtual conference I attended on the weekend, all right? All right, so getting to today's topic, why should you follow up? Why is it important for you to follow up? Now, why did I want to speak about this, right? Now, follow up is a piece of advice that I always give out to job seekers that I come into contact with, right? I've been doing this ever since, back when I was in recruitment, and recently, even now that I made the transition into job search coaching, always something I highly highly recommend, right? And the thing is, most of you as job seekers, you're expecting the responsibility of follow up to be on the recruiter or the hiring manager. Now, I definitely want to say that, hey, if you're a recruiter watching this, you're a hiring manager watching this, it is definitely and certainly the most professional thing for you to do is actually update your candidates. All right. If someone's taking the time to meet with you and come in for an interview or schedule an interview or do some kind of an assignment or a test or a mini project, the least you could do, folks, if you're a hiring manager, you're a recruiter, is to provide that feedback, right? So just wanted to get that out of the way. It's definitely the professional thing to do. Now, that being said, job seekers, right? Now I'm talking to job seekers out there. That being said, job seekers out there, I want you to take responsibility for follow-up, all right? Put aside all that, if you're feeling upset about them not getting back, all that, I want you to put all that stuff aside for a moment, all right? I want you to stay with me here. I want you to take full responsibility for follow-up. Why? And I'm going to talk about this a bit later, because if nothing else, if you are the one, job seekers, to take responsibility for follow-up, guess who's in control, at least of the dynamic at that point, right? It's going to be you. Now, I want you to take full responsibility for follow-up, and right, and myself as a recruiter, as I was working in recruitment, I always took full responsibility for updating my candidates, but not everyone out there is going to do that, folks. Not every recruiter out there, not every hiring manager out there is going to follow up with you. And I'm going to speak about this a bit more later, but in most cases, it could have nothing to do with you. All right. But we're going to talk about that later. But for now, what I want you to start off with is, hey, take full responsibility for follow-up as a job seeker. I want you to assume responsibility for it. Now, before getting into that, I did want to get into one thing, right? And one thing about follow-up I wanted to also signify is, depending on just one follow-up, folks, is not going to cut it. All right. If you're taking notes, you definitely want to take note of that as well, right? Depending on just one follow-up attempt is not sufficient. You got to be willing to do multiple follow-up points of contact. We got Dharmendra in the house. Hey, Dharmendra, good to have you here. Nice to have you here. Hope you're doing fantastic. And David Morales says, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, Wayne Gretzky. Fantastic quote there, David. I'm so glad you mentioned that because it's so true. So listen to what David is saying, right? Wayne Gretzky, another sports great, right? Another legend in the world of hockey. He said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Also very, 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 very important. So thanks so much for sharing that, David. All right, so going back to the follow-up, folks, all right? So never depend on one point of follow-up. You need to be willing to make multiple points of follow-up, all right? So you need to be consistent in your follow-up schedule, and the follow-up needs to be laid out over a period of time and done consistently. Now, another thing I wanted to clarify is follow-up does not simply mean you reaching out to the recruiter or you reaching out to the hiring team and saying, hey, do you have an update? Or hey, do you have an update? And, you keep on asking them that every single time you're following up. That's just a very small part of it. You definitely want to be asking for an update. You definitely want to be asking if they have, made a final decision. You definitely want to ask that. I'm not saying don't ask that. But if that's all you're doing in your follow-up, you are limiting the power of follow-up, folks, all right? Because follow-up is much more powerful than just that. All right, so I just wanted to start off with those couple of points before we get started. So assuming you've got all that stuff handled, you understand that follow-up is much more than just that. And one more thing I wanted to add is, I want you folks, and if you're taking notes, you want to write this down. Follow-up is not a task. Follow-up is not a task. It's a strategy, all right? Follow-up is not a task. It's a strategy. I want you to write that down if you're taking notes. Follow-up is not a task. It's a strategy. So this is why most of you are hesitant. You're reluctant to follow up because you're thinking follow-up is just a task, right? Just like, taking out the trash or taking up the garbage or something you do as a task, right? Watering the plants. Now, if you focus just on the fact that you have to water your plants, you're going to look at it as just a task, right? But how do you want to look at it as a strategy, right? The strategy is you want to take care of this plant that's going to, make your home look nice and well, and, nice and welcoming and fresh and all that stuff. And maybe the plant has some kind of a positive psychological effect on you. And maybe the plant is going to improve the air quality in your home. That's the strategy, right? So this is where you folks need to take a different mindset, of a different viewpoint on follow-up. Do not look at it as a task. You got to look at it as a strategy, right? Just like if you're watering your plant, If you're only focusing on the fact that you got to water your plants, that's just a task. You're probably going to neglect it. You're not going to see the big picture, right? And you might not do it. You might be doing it sporadically. You're not doing it consistently, and you're not really making a commitment to it. But if you look at it from a strategic standpoint, you're like, okay, I'm going to water the plants. It's going to make my house look good. It's going to make it look welcoming. When people come in, they're going to get this nice feeling when they enter my home because it's a nice plant. It's going to improve the air quality of my house or my apartment or my condo, whatever it is. And it has some positive, psychological effects on me as well. That's strategy. So this is the same way you got to look at your follow-up. Follow-up is not a task. It is not a task, folks. Follow-up is a strategy. All right. Write that down if you're taking notes. Now, getting into why follow-up. Okay. So now we're looking at follow-up as a strategy. So as a strategy, why is follow-up so important, right? Why is it so important? We got a comment here from someone. Someone says, don't put all your eggs in one basket, spread it out and diversify. Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that. And whoever this is, I'm actually going to cover this at the closer to the end of the segment. But yes, very important. While you want to follow up, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Then we got Kalpesh here, says, hi, Dean. Hey, Kalpesh, good to have you here. Yeah, so feel free to put any questions you have in the comments as well, folks. Happy to answer any questions you have about this topic. But look, first things foremost, right? You got to look at follow-up as a strategy. It's not a task. It is a strategy, folks, all right? So going back to what I want to talk about today, why do you need to follow up, right? Why do you need to follow up? What is the outcome of follow-up, right? Because we're looking at it as a strategy now. So number one is it puts you in control, right? Because when you're not following up, if you're putting, and this goes back to taking responsibility for follow-up, if you're putting all the responsibility of follow-up onto your point of contact, the recruiter, the hiring manager, all those people, guess who's in control? They are. You're not in control, folks. So taking the initiative and you initiating follow-up, who does that put in control? That puts you in control. Because if you're waiting for a response, you're waiting for a decision, you're waiting on the next steps, you're waiting to hear back from them. Waiting puts you in a state of passiveness, right? And lack of control. It's not proactive and you're not in control. And look, think back to all of you folks, think back to when you're waiting on getting a response from a recruiter, waiting on someone to get back to you, waiting on, and not just your professional life. I'm not just talking about the job search, just anything in general. Just think about any situation where you're waiting for something to happen, right? You experience this lack of control. You're not in control. You're being passive. And it's just like, you don't feel like you have control over the outcome. So when you follow up, it puts you in a state of control right off the bat because you're initiating follow-up, you're initiating communication, and you're doing something, right? You're doing something to help move things along in the process. So you need to put yourself in that position where you are in control. And when you follow up, you're putting yourself in control. You're not passively waiting. You're being proactive and you're taking the initiative, and it puts you in a position of more control over the outcome, right? Versus you just stay sitting around and waiting around for something to happen and waiting for something to change in your situation or in your state, right? So what you got to do, folks, is, and this is one of the major components of why you need to follow up, is it puts you in control, right? That's point number one, is follow up puts you in control. It puts you in control. Now, point number two is, and this is extremely important, this is something that so many people don't really pay attention to in regards to follow-up. And this is why you need to follow up. It allows you to maintain communication and keep those communication channels open. Now, many of you are not looking at follow-up from this standpoint. Many of you are looking at it, again, going back to what I said before, you're seeing follow-up as a way for you to get an update or find out where you stand in the process, which is again, definitely important. But the other way I want you to see follow-up is as a way for you to maintain communication flow, right? So maintaining communication with the other party or whoever your contact is ensures that you're able to stay on top of their mind, right? Because especially if your point of contact is a recruiter or maybe it's a hiring manager, the company's growing fast. They might have multiple opportunities that they're dealing with right now, right? And it's very easy for them to lose track of or by mistake, forget about you and forget about getting back to you and stuff like that. So by maintaining that communication, you're staying on top of their mind, right? Because they probably got a whole bunch of other stuff going on as well. And most hiring managers, folks, they're quite busy, and especially recruiters are quite busy. And if we're talking about recruiters are not just recruiting on this one role that they're in communication with you for, right? Usually recruiters are recruiting on multiple different positions, 5, 6, sometimes even 10 different positions, right? So these individuals, recruiters, hiring managers, they can be very, very busy with other stuff, right? And keep in mind, even in respect to hiring managers, their core function is not recruitment, right? A hiring manager usually has some other core function that they provide to the organization they're working for. So they might have ongoing projects that they got to deal with that's outside of this recruitment cycle, or outside of interviewing candidates for the position that they're interviewing for. So they can get caught up with so many different stuff. So when you follow up and you follow up consistently, this allows you to maintain communication and keep those channels open, and making sure you're on top of their mind so they don't forget about you. All right. So recruiters, and going back to recruiters focus entirely on communicating with people. So it's very, very possible, if you don't follow up, your face or your profile, your resume might get lost in the crowd, right? Because again, recruiters are usually recruiting on multiple positions, usually speaking to multiple individuals every single day, right? At a minimum, like 10 people every day at least. So consistent follow-up at your side, right? You're taking initiative on making follow-up, and you're seeing follow-up as a strategy. You're seeing how you can you can maintain the communication. So consistent follow-up ensures that you keep yourself on top of their mind, or at least increase your chances of being kept on top of mind of the recruiter and of the hiring manager. And you maintain that communication flow post-interview as well. So this is not just for the application stage. I'm talking like throughout the interview cycle, throughout the recruitment cycle. You got to make sure you're maintaining the communication. So you can maintain that communication, before the interview, right? When you're at the application stage, you're in the pre-screen stage, you're in the first interview stage, second interview stage, third interview stage, final interview stage. Throughout the process, you got to maintain the communication flow, and that's what follow-up is going to help you accomplish, right? So let me just quickly look at the comments here. We got some comments here. We got someone says, keep trying with proper strategies. Yeah, absolutely. You got to keep trying with the proper strategies, right? We got Tanya in the house. Tanya says, hi, Dean. Hey, Tanya, good to have you here. And thanks for tuning in. Appreciate your comment. We got someone who says, process to be understand and follow the strategies, and also certain times need to try harder, need to explore and understand the market responses, which we understand our status. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what you're trying to say here, but what I get from this is you got to understand the process, right? So definitely, folks, so whoever this is, if you're talking about the importance of understanding the process, yeah, definitely very important, right? So Orlando asked a good. So a shout out to Orlando. Orlando, good to have you here. Orlando says, when you apply via a company page, how can you follow up? So this is a great question here, Orlando. So again, thanks for your question, Orlando. So look, if you folks are applying for a position, you're applying on a company page, how do you follow up? So this is where you got to do some research and you got to do some legwork, Orlando, right? So this is where you might have to go into LinkedIn, right? And maybe do some research on who some potential hiring managers might be for this position or for this company you're interested in working in, right? Now, you can do that, or what you can do is you can find out and figure out who the HR department might be, or who the internal corporate recruiter might be. And then you want to make direct contact with them, and then you want to follow up with them, right? So this is where you got to do some legwork, folks, right? So this is a typical situation a lot of you might be, right? Just like how Orlando is saying. So apply for the job. If you want to follow up, you might have to go into LinkedIn, make use of LinkedIn, go through the employee list for the company and figure out who might be some potential points of contact you can follow up on, right? And you can follow up with. Now, if your point of contact is a staffing agency, you're applying through a staffing agency, you got to make sure that you're contacting the staffing agency, right? You don't want to bypass them. If you have a relationship with them, if they presented you for the role, you don't want to bypass them. You might have to go through the staffing agency in that case, all right? So this is what you got to do. You got to lay out the groundwork. You got to do some research, and you got to do that. Now, if you want more help with that, my current course, which I just released about a month ago, Applying to Jobs Online 101, I actually teach you in detail how to do this, and how to do the research aspect, how to identify the key decision makers, and how to follow up specifically as well. All right. So make sure you check it out. More information about that, feel free to check out dkglobaltalent.com/get interviews. I'll talk about that a bit more later on in the segment. Tanya says, follow up puts you in control always, and it allows you to maintain and keep communication. Yeah, exactly, Tanya. Thanks for sharing that. So Tanya is keeping up with the notes. Good stuff here. I see some more questions. I'm going to get to the questions shortly, folks. But I'm going to keep pushing through. All right. So far, that's what we got, right? So as Tanya said, it puts you in control, allows you to maintain communication throughout the recruitment process. You got to keep those communication channels open, folks. Right now, The third reason why follow-up is so important is because it allows you to show continued interest. All right. Follow-up allows you folks to show continued interest, which is extremely important and very important. Now, I can tell you this as someone who has worked in recruitment, right? Everything being equal between two candidates. Let's say we got two candidates, everything being equal, same knowledge, same experience, similar skills, similar expertise, similar levels of experience, all that being equal, the one who shows more interest will get the opportunity, folks. All right, listen to what I'm saying right now. Everything being equal between two candidates, whoever shows the most interest will be more preferred by the hiring team, right? This is based on my experience working in recruitment. So this is why it's so important, folks, to utilize follow-up as a way for you to show continued interest. So as you're formulating and thinking about your follow-up strategy, you got to be thinking about, hey, how can I use my follow-up to show continued interest in this opportunity? This is very important. And follow-up is one of the best ways to show continued interest in the position, right? Not just the position, the position, the team, the organization, the organizational culture, the entire opportunity as a whole. So as you're following up, you got to keep following up and keep showing that you have a high level of interest in the opportunity. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, hey, Dean, like, isn't that like, coming across as desperate? Isn't that me being desperate? No, folks, I'm not saying be desperate here, right? There's a difference between being desperate and showing interest, right? Desperate would be you reaching out and saying, hey, Dean, I really need this job. I really need this opportunity. Please consider me. I can't find anything. Oh, help me. I've been praying. I've been doing this. I've been doing that. Yeah, that's desperation. You do not want to. Desperation is not the end goal, folks. We're not aiming for desperation here. We're showing interest, right? So interest would be, hey, Dean, I just want to let you know, I came in for an interview last week. Just want to let you know I'm really excited about the opportunity. I love how your company is doing X, Y, Z, perfectly in line with what I'm trying to achieve in my career. And just want to let you know, I know you're busy, but I just want to let you know I'm very, very interested in this opportunity. Really looking forward to hearing back from you. That's showing interest, right? See the difference, right? See the difference between showing desperation and showing interest, right? Now, as a side note, a lot of you who are actively job seeking, you're doing those posts on LinkedIn, right? You're saying, hey, I'm desperately in need for a job. That is desperation, unfortunately, right? Now, yes, you might get some likes, you might get some attention from that. And if you are, hey, God bless you, great for you, good for you, that's great. But for the rest of us who are not going to get those 10,000 likes and 500,000 views on LinkedIn because the post went viral, if your post is not going viral, then you need to stick to showing interest or demonstrating interest. You demonstrating your expertise, demonstrating what you bring to the table. All right. So anyway, going back to follow up, you got to show interest, right? Showing interest does not mean desperation. There's a big difference. You want to show continued interest, and follow up allows you to show that continued interest again throughout the interview cycle, folks, throughout the recruitment cycle. Like again, remember, follow up is not a task, right? It's a strategy. We're thinking strategy. We're thinking strategic here. So you gotta, pour in that interest into your follow-up strategy, right? So that's a very important part of follow-up. A lot of people are not, seeing follow-up in this manner, and you got to make sure, you're implementing that as part of your follow-up. Is, hey, how do I show continued interest in my follow-up, right? Now we got a question here from Mina. So Mina asked a great question. So shout out to Mina. Good to have you here, Mina. So Mina says, when is the best time to send a follow-up email after the interview date? All right, so very good question. Now my advice in regards to this, folks, is you need to set up the stage for follow-up at the interview itself, right? So Mina's asking, how do you follow up after the interview, right? After you've gone in, you met with them, you do the whole interview thing, and they're like, okay, yeah, we're going to be in touch with you, whatever, right? That is the point at which, Mina, I advise you to set up the stage for follow-up, right? So before you leave, you should ask the hiring team or the recruiter, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter, Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager, I really appreciate your time. Love the opportunity, or, et cetera, all that stuff. Now, I wanted to confirm with you, Mr. and Mrs. Recruiter or Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager, what are the next steps beyond this point, and when can I expect to hear back from you, right? So this is where you have to get a confirmation from them in terms of when they're getting back. And then they're going to say, oh, yeah, well, we're going to get back to you, probably in about a week. Then that's where you, Mina, have to let them know, okay, great, Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager. I will be following up with you a week from now, given that you said that you should be able to get back to me within a week. And I'm going to follow up with you, and I'm going to check in with you on what the next steps are beyond that point. So when you let them know that, Mina, then they're going to, first of all, it's going to let them know, first of all, that you're very interested in the opportunity, right? Again, this is another way for you to show interest. The second thing is it's going to let them know, and they're going to expect you to follow up, right? And this is what I mean by setting the stage for follow-up. You're letting them know, hey, you're giving them a heads up. You're like, hey, folks, just letting you know, I'm going to be following up with you, right? You're setting the stage. So, and when you do that, they're going to expect the follow-up. So it's not going to be like you're pestering and stuff like that. Now, another thing, a bonus tip I wanted to mention in regards to this, Mina, the thank you note is a form of follow-up. A lot of you folks are not thinking about the thank you note after the interview as a follow-up, but it is, I definitely would consider this a follow-up. So even right after the interview, Mina, when you go home and you get settled in and all that stuff, you should send the thank you note as soon as possible. Now, I could probably do another stream itself on thank you notes, and I'll probably cover that in a future stream. But the thank you note, the purpose of the thank you note is not just, some generic thank you note where you thank them for your time. No, this is also a strategic message, right? And I want you to think about it as follow-up. So this is the thank you note. Is where you summarize the meeting and you let them know, of your interest in the opportunity. And this is where, Mina, in the thank you note, you can mention your confirmation on the follow-up aspect, right? So you can say, you can end off your thank you note by saying, as per our discussion earlier today, Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager, I will be following up with you in about a week in order to get an idea of what the next steps are and how you want to move forward, right? So you can reiterate that in the thank you note, all right? So hope that helps, Mina. Great question there. All right, so let's get back to it, right? So what did I talk about, right? Showing interest. That's a very important part of what follow-up will help you accomplish is showing interest, right? Showing that interest throughout the process. Now, fourth aspect, folks. Now, this one is like the money one. Like, I got to take a sip before I even talk about the fourth part, because this is the most exciting part. The fourth important aspect of follow-up and what follow-up is going to help you accomplish is number 4, folks, right? I hope you're writing this down. It's an opportunity for you to provide value add. All right, value add. Now, I give this advice to a lot of job seekers, but to be frank, folks, I'm not sure how many of you are even paying attention to this part because, most of you are going to feel a little, antsy about doing this. But follow-up communication is a great opportunity to further add value after the interview, right? And what I mean by this is, hopefully during the interview, you've got an idea of what the pain points, what the challenges are that the hiring team is experiencing. And part of your follow-up should be providing, information, data, and things of value post-interview or after the interview process. And again, this allows you to position yourself as someone of value. So again, the fourth aspect is, and the fourth reason why you want to be following up is, it's an opportunity for you to provide some kind of a value add, right? Did they mention some problem at the interview, right? How about you find an article and actually share something that would be of value to the interviewer or to the hiring manager? Maybe there's some kind of some kind of a post that you did. Maybe you posted something on LinkedIn that you feel would be of value to the hiring manager. How about you send that off? How about you include that as part of your follow-up? Look, the point here is to stay in communication, right? Going back to tip number 2, point number 2, you're staying in communication. You're also accomplishing number 3, which is showing interest. And you're showing that you're adding value to and showing empathy and adding value to whatever they've got going on at their organization. And you're providing things of value during your follow-up. And guess what? This might open up further opportunities for you to sell them on your value, right? And another quick example, let's say that you discuss, some problem going on in, when you were at the interview itself. Why not say, hey, I mean, the follow-up might be an opportunity for you to get back in front of them again, right? So you might say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Hiring Manager, I know it's been about a week since we spoke. I was thinking about problem XYZ that you mentioned at the interview. And hey, I just had a quick idea I wanted to let you know about. Wondering if we can get on another phone call, right? So this is where you're using follow-up. You're showing interest. You're providing a value add to get yourself back in front of the hiring team so you can, again, demonstrate your value, right? So this is the fourth and final aspect of follow-up, folks. It's extremely important for you to understand, the real full value of conducting good follow-up, right? So let me review what I spoke about so far as to why you need to use follow-up as part of your job search strategy, right? Number 1, it puts you in control. You're taking the initiative. You're taking responsibility for it. It puts you in control. Number 2, it allows you to maintain communication and keep those communication channels open. Number 3, it allows you to show continued interest, right? Remember, everything being equal between 2 candidates of equal ability, everything being equal, the job will go to the one showing the most interest. Number 4, it's an opportunity for you to value add, right? Beyond the interview, beyond the conversation, for you to continuously show value based on your conversation. And even if you're in the application stage, if you're doing your research, you should be able to find out what exactly would be of value to the organization or to your points of contact or to the hiring team, right? So these are some reasons why it's so important. Now, I wanted to end it off by saying, first of all, I want to highlight two other things, right? Number 1 is you should never depend on just one attempt at follow-up. Follow-up, again, remember, it's not a task, it's a strategy. You need to carry out over a period of time. It needs to be carried out consistently over a period of time, folks, right? And the other thing is you got to keep filling your pipeline with other opportunities, right? This is another mistake I've seen so many job seekers make is they're like, oh yeah, Dean, you know what? I really like this opportunity. I'm going to keep following up on these people. I'm going to keep following up with them. And then what happens is it doesn't go through or something falls apart and you're back to square one, right? So yes, you want to follow up. Yes, I don't want you to give up on the opportunities you currently have, in your pipeline. But I want you to keep adding new opportunities. I want you to keep applying for jobs, keep interviewing. Folks, listen to me. Nothing is confirmed until you're in the seat and you're working for the company. Until then, you do not give up on applying on for other opportunities, and you do not stop interviewing for other positions. Until the ink's on the paper and you're working for the company, nothing is confirmed, all right? This is very important. So many of you drop the ball, right? Now I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here because a lot of you are making this mistake. You get all excited about some company, right? You throw a barbecue, you're celebrating and all that stuff, and nothing's confirmed yet. You haven't even started working for the company. Anything can happen, folks. As someone who has worked in the staffing industry, unfortunately I've seen this happen, a couple of times where, everything seems like everything's good, and then suddenly some internal change happens at the company, and they got to put a halt. They got to take back the offer, and it can't go through. So do not celebrate, folks, until you're in the seat working for the company. Until then, folks, you got to keep applying for jobs, keep applying for opportunities, keep interviewing at other organizations. Nothing is confirmed until you are confirmed, until you are in the seat working for the organization, all right? So this is so important. So while you're doing your follow-up, while you're checking up on these companies you're really excited about, you're really interested about, hey, I'm not saying don't be excited. I'm not saying don't do that. What I'm saying is let's be realistic. Let's be pragmatic. Let's be smart about this, folks. All right. So while you're following up, you're doing your follow-up, you're treating it like a strategy, not like a task. While you're doing that, remember, your friend Dean said, keep applying, keep interviewing, right? Nothing's confirmed until you're in the seat. All right. So just something very, very important I wanted to highlight for you folks out there because it's extremely important for you folks to understand that. Right. So before we get into the question, just want to give you folks a heads up. For those of you who want more help on this, my course, Applying to Jobs Online 101, I go into follow-up in much more detail. It's actually 1/3 of my program is entirely on follow-up, right? And in my program, I'm going to be teaching the 3 steps for applying to jobs the right way, right? My 3-step process. So, step 1 of my process is applying for the right opportunities and identifying the decision makers and the points of contact. Step number 2 is direct messaging. How do you direct message effectively? And I teach the 4 components to an effective direct message. And step number 3 is follow-up. Follow-up, folks, that is where the gold is. And in my program, I talk about the 3 aspects to follow-up that you need to have that increases the effectiveness of your follow-up. So right now you can grab my program. It's $97 Canadian. It's an at your own pace program. Like you can do it at your own pace. It's divided into 3 modules. Realistically, you can complete the whole course literally within like 3-4 hours if you did it in one sitting, but you can spread it out over a couple of days as well. And what I'm also including right now is so the program itself has pre-recorded video content. It has written stuff that you got to read through. And I'm currently providing access, for your support, providing access to a private Facebook group community, so you can ask me your questions about the course throughout the week. And then also I'm throwing in right now for a limited time, I'm throwing in a weekly Zoom call with myself, right? It's a group Zoom call where all of us meet on Zoom once a week. And you ask me all of your questions about the material in the course and anything else job search related as well. So it's an opportunity for me to hold you accountable and make sure you're not going at it alone, and make sure you don't feel like you're being pushed into the deep end of the pool and expected to swim. All right. So for those of you interested, you can grab my course. It's at dkglobaltalent.com/get interviews, dkglobaltalent.com/get interviews. More information about the course and what's covered and all that. dkglobaltalent.com/get interviews. Again, dkglobaltalent.com/get interviews. Hope to see you folks on the program. and on the weekly Zoom calls and on the Facebook group. Right? Say, if you found this session helpful, hit me up with a like and a share, folks. I hope this information was helpful today. And let me get into the questions now. Right? I know we had some questions in the comments. By the way, any other questions you folks have, feel free to put in the comments. All right, I'm going to get to the questions now. All right, so my friend Mohib here. So shout out to Mohib. Good to see you here. So Mohib says, sir, how do you see the future of freelancing? Will it grow more than general way of working? Yeah, so Mohib, this is a great question. Personally, Mohib, from what I'm seeing in the marketplace, I definitely feel like freelancing and contracting is definitely going to keep increasing in demand, especially right now, Mohib, right? Because with the advent of COVID-19, right? Yeah, most companies are kind of stabilized now. They're kind of gotten into the flow of things, but some industries, some companies, some organizations, they're still trying to figure out, hey, how's this thing going to turn out? Like, what's going to happen from this point onwards, right? So because of that, there's still some uncertainty for certain industries and certain companies, certain organizations out there in terms of what effect COVID-19 and this pandemic and how things are playing out from this point onwards, how it's going to affect their business. Now, what does this do to the recruitment aspects and the hiring aspects, right? Well, what this does is this creates some uncertainty, right? So they're like, hey, so should we invest in people full time, permanent for the long term, or should we just get some freelancers or some contractors in here, until we figure out what's going to happen in our industry, this point onwards. So because of that, Mohib, I feel like definitely freelancing, contracting, contract positions, where it's a couple of weeks, couple of months gig, or maybe it's like a 1 year gig, and with the option of renewing and stuff like that. Definitely see that increasing. And in fact, Mohib, if you go to my I had a guest recently, right? And my guest, I can't remember his name right now. I think it was Rakesh. I think his name was Rakesh. Sorry, forgive me. But if you go to my YouTube, Mohib, go to my previous live streams. And it was in one of my previous tech talk segments, right? I had a guest. I think his name was, I'm pretty sure it was Rakesh Desai Gudar. I think that was his name. So he actually talks about the gig economy and this whole freelancing and gig thing. So make sure you check it out. He shared some very interesting statistics and figures and facts and data on the increasing popularity of freelancing and gig and the what he called the new gig economy, right? So check that out, Mohib. That should have more insights regarding that. But yeah, I feel like gigs and freelancing contracts, these are definitely going to continue to increase in popularity, especially while companies are not feeling as confident to hire people for the long term, right? They're not sure if they want to bring someone in long term, full-time permanent and invest in those people. So a lot of companies are definitely considering, freelance workers, contractors, gig workers, to bring them on board and help them out with their projects. So, hope that helps, Mohib. And check out that segment on that previous segment on my YouTube as well. So it looks like that's all the questions, folks. So look, I hope everyone got great information out of this session. Some great information and insights on this session. Any other questions or comments, feel free to put in the comments. If I end the stream, I'll do my best to respond to any questions afterwards as well. And hey, mark your calendars, folks. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm right here, 11 a.m. Eastern time zone. I talk about various job search tips and topics, strategies, things based on my experiences working as a recruiter, also based on my experiences as a job seeker, right? I know what it's like, folks, applying to jobs, not getting any responses, especially right now when there's much more competition in the marketplace, right? Much more talented people competing over fewer opportunities. So you got to make sure you're taking those proactive steps. And today's topic, follow-up is a very, very, very much a proactive aspect of a proactive strategy. All of you folks need to be incorporating into your job search strategy. All right. And again, if you need help with that, if you're interested in learning more about my program, make sure you check it out. It's at dkglobaltalent.com/get-interviews, dkglobaltalent.com/get-interviews, dkglobaltalent.com/get-interviews. Hey, hope this session was helpful. For those of you tuning in again, I'll see you tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time zone, where I'm going to talk about another job search related tip and topic, which you folks are going to, hopefully you're taking notes. You're going to take it away. Execution, folks. You got to execute. If you don't execute, none of this information is any good. All right. So execution is key. So take this information, implement it, execute on it. And I'll see you tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad place, 11 a.m. Eastern time zone right here. All right. Hey, everyone, take care.